Hi, everybody. Steve Tarter back for another edition of Tartar Sauce, and very happy to have Marty Wombacher as my guest. Marty, we've done podcasts with the Journal Star, and
oh yeah,
you're well known to a Peoria audience. You've got the Meanwhile Back in Peoria blog,
right,
which is been rolling out for how many years since you've been back from?
It's crazy to think this, but in December we'll start the 7th year.
7th year, and you work that blog. I mean, some people will say, "Oh, I got a blog," and they throw up every now and then. You work it hard. You got your little camera with you.
I'm always taking, as you always say, I'm always taking. Here, I'll take a picture of our podcast here.
If
take a picture of all the Facebook people.
I'm sure most people who are been around Peoria a while already know about your blog. You focus on food,
right,
and arts a little bit.
Pretty much like everything.
Yeah, you like me. You're a generalist. Give us the quick Marty Wombacher story, because I'm sure there's always somebody that goes, I've heard of this guy, but what is it? It's not quick. Well, we're going to make it quick, Marty.
Okay. It really all started in 1985 with this game Trivial Trivia, the Idiot Edition. Because before that, I was working at Fleming Potter, but the job was okay, but it's not really what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I told
Fleming Potter, we better explain.
Right.
Because it's been years now since was the... How would you call it? Stamp or
it was a
label?
They made labels. They did, if you remember, Publishers Clearinghouse was one of their big clients. We did all theirs. It was a printing company.
But a national. They had national business.
We did one of their big things was we did all Hiram Walker's labels, Jack Daniels. We did a lot of liquor labels. It was a big company here in Peoria. They employed probably like 300 people. And
now it's a apartment complex.
Yeah, it's the Persimmon Lofts.
All right.
I was there for 13 years, but in 1985, I did this game with Greg Owens, the guy that I worked with. We did a satire of Trivial Pursuit, and we just did it for a goof.
Right.
In fact, this is going to be the subject of an upcoming Marty Monologues show. We'll talk about it in a minute. We'll try and squeeze all this into 19 minutes.
See, I only have to ask Marty one question, and this is done.
We did this game, and it was just kind of for a goof, for something to do. And it was called Trivial Trivia, the Idiot Edition. And the questions were such as, who's buried in Grant's tomb? How many members were in the original Jackson 5? And it was just a goofy thing that we did kind of for a lark. Well, to make a long story short, we got a lot of local publicity that we didn't even try for.
Right.
That led to getting on the UPI wire service, picked it up, which led to us being on the Today Show, and we got interviewed by Jane Pauley in January of 1986. And then it's like I'm working on a show called 45 Minutes of Fame. That's the new one coming up. We'll talk about that in a minute.
The monologue.
Yeah. I've had 3 times in my life where I've had what they call 15 minutes of fame. And that was the first one.
Okay.
Because we got on the Today Show, and it all happened so fast that I didn't think of the ramifications because once we were scheduled to be on there, the Journal Star, they had it on the front of the queue. Local guys on the Today Show. We were on every news station here in Peoria. And like I said, it was just happening so fast that when we flew back into Peoria, I remember getting off the plane with Greg, and some couple came running up to us like, "Oh my God, we saw you guys on the Today Show." And I was saying to Greg, do you think this will start happening a lot? And it did. For like about 6 weeks, I couldn't go anywhere in Peoria
without being seen.
And I was known as the Idiot Trivia Guy.
Oh, okay.
So he would come, "Aren't you the Idiot Trivia Guy?" And you're like, "Yeah."
This is before really the internet took hold.
There was no internet then. This is 1986.
Yeah.
So that was the start of it. And then we did various other projects for the next 7 years. I ended up doing a magazine, which you were part of, called People of Peoria.
I think we met. Yeah.
It is.
POP. And
Right.
I bring that up now because there's now a new POP.
Really?
Peoria I want to say on purpose. On purpose.
Really?
Which is, it's kind of reflecting the
It's not Peoria. It's not so bad.
yeah, what a great push for the city right there.
I love this.
Where'd you find that one?
That's a Relics gift shop.
Okay.
They have sold a ton of these shirts. And whenever you know what's funny, and then it gets sidetracked, like I say, you get me going.
Of course.
I was in Mexico about a year ago, and I had this shirt on in the beach, walking on the beach. And somebody else out to me, they're like, "Hey, are you from Peoria?" And I turn around, and there's this couple standing there. I'm like, "Yeah, you know Peoria?" He's like, "I was born there." This is in San Pancho, Mexico.
A very small little...
Tiny. It's like an 1800 village I went to. I started talking to this guy. We had a drink, him and his wife. It turns out that his grandfather was the guy that started Schratsky's clothing store.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Which
crazy.
was a big thing here.
Huge.
Well, it's great that you're promoting the town as you want to.
Bad.
Well, let's jump to, I know you've got a whole windy road to explore,
there
but
is.
we'll jump around. You have been following a lot of restaurants.
Yeah.
And you just told me, think of a chicken place because you're doing a chicken tour.
I'm doing 13. I do these food tours on the blog. One thing I discovered in blogging is that people love. I know there's a cooking show that they do.
Yeah, right here.
People
Your Life.
People love to like look at food and read about it. And the food things I do usually are like the bigger. Get the bigger audiences because I can see the number of people looking at it. So every Saturday night I go out for a Saturday night dinner, just a local restaurant. Last week I did it at the fair, the Heart of Illinois Fair.
That's good.
Yeah, I had dinner out there, and I always take a ton of pictures.
What did you eat? Corn dog?
No, I actually went to El Zarapi, which is a Mexican restaurant I like on where they had a booth out there.
Oh, good.
And I know the whole family that runs it, so that was a lot of
They're
fun.
the one on Western?
Western, yeah. Really good place. But I always pick, I go to Agatushi's a lot, which is, Lou's is always big in the summer when I go to Lou's Drive-In. But I go, but what I like to do is to take a bunch of photos and string them together kind of as my night is going along. And it gives people the feeling that they're really on this little adventure with me. And
yeah. Well, I follow that and seen a lot of your things. And the people seem to respond to you because you talk about your 15 minutes of fame. You're often known when you come in. They know that it's for the blog, right?
Yeah,
the folks at the restaurant because you've been doing it 7 years.
yeah, it's crazy.
So you've mentioned a few places. What about places that you wouldn't otherwise know? Everyone knows about Agatushi's and Lou's. Give us a few places that are out of the way that have surprised you.
There's a place speaking of Mexican restaurants, there's a lot of Mexican restaurants in Peoria. El Mexicano, I believe is the name of it.
It's Adams.
A little place, and I went there and they have really good Mexican food. There's so many places, I can't even begin to list them all, but that's one of the things I like about doing a blog. I told somebody this the other day. It's like last Saturday, if you remember, it was really hot out.
Yeah.
I would not have gone to the Heart of Illinois Fair. I probably would have just thought, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go home and have a couple beers and sit in the air conditioning.
Yeah, find some cooler place.
Yeah, but I went there and I really had a good time. I had a lot of fun.
With a lot of people there?
It wasn't packed, but there were more people than I thought. There was a nice band. There was a local band called the Blank Stares playing in the beer tent. Young kids. I think they're right out of high school, but that was fun. They have a wine shed out there now. You can go and sample wine and, of course, look at all the rides on the Midway. So it forces me to go out and do stuff and to meet people. I mean, in the 7 years of doing that, I literally have probably met thousands of people.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. Speaking of the fair, we'll jump back to it, which just finished here. That's got to be a tough challenge, promoting a fair.
It is.
In these days of, well, I mean, I think there's many reasons given for why the Heart of Illinois Fair in particular has probably suffered in terms of numbers.
Well, one big thing is now on the riverfront in the summer. Every weekend there's stuff going on down there. There's a lot more. Back when we were younger, when the Heart of Illinois Fair came, that was the only game in town.
Well, you could also get top name entertainment, which you can't afford anymore.
Beach Boys and Bob Hope. But it's still fun. What really bothers me, and it kind of reflects his T-shirt, it's not so bad, is when, because I mean, I got a comment like this on on the post from the fair. People like put it down.
Right.
Like, oh, that sucks now.
Yeah, it's no longer any good.
Yeah, and it's different, but it's still fun. And it's like, I wish people would support things more than just say, oh, that's no good. And that's one of the points of my blog is because when I lived in New York for 19 years, from 93 to 2012. And when I told all my friends in New York that I was going to move back here, it was funny. The common response was, oh, I'm so sorry you got to go back there. I mean, it's a great town. It's not like you're going to this horrible, like...
Well, it. I mean, there's familiarity. Plus, I think one of the things we've explored, or I've thought about, and others have told me their own thoughts, you can do things in Peoria that you can't do in New York.
Right.
Obviously, the reverse is true, too.
Yeah.
There's many things New York offers that Peoria will never have. And that's to be expected in a huge metropolitan.
One thing, although I feel proud I did pull it off in both cities, is like when you are doing a blog, I mean, there are other Peoria bloggers, but there's not that many of them.
No.
So it's easier to kind of be the king of the hill here.
Right.
It's like when I did People of Peoria. It was just myself and John Wright's parents, who now does Peoria magazines.
Oh, sure.
The three of us were the only desktop publishers in Peoria back then. So you can kind of rise to the top because not as many people are doing things. Like I say, when I was planning on moving back here, I did do some research, and I saw that there weren't that many blogs, and there weren't really any that like went out and did crazy stuff, as well as I do go to restaurants now, but I also do some nutty stuff.
Right.
Like
Well,
there's a segment.
We would be disappointed if you didn't.
There's a segment that I do on there, and I don't like to do it because it's so uncomfortable. But I go to businesses with a lunch, and I ask them if I can eat my lunch in their lunchroom. And that has caused some places.
Where did you get that idea?
It was weird. I went to here on Main Street. There was a drive-up place. I can't think of the name of it now. It's right down the street where you can get food from the window. And now it's a taco place.
Right. Yeah, I know it.
And I went there. It's just my way my mind works. But and that was going to be the blog. But I've always wanted to go to the Converse building at the top of the hill.
Right.
It's an old historical building.
Oh, beautiful building.
And
yeah.
I just always wanted to go in there. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take my lunch there and just ask them if I can eat my lunch in there and see what they do.
And what do they do?
Well, that's one of the things, too, I like about doing the vlog is that you can do anything you want to do because it's under this guise that you're doing this journalistic thing.
This is for posterity.
Yeah, whereas in real life, if you did it, you'd probably get locked up. So, I know I went there, and this is almost always the reaction. I walked in, the receptionist there, she's like, hello, can I help you? And I said, yeah, my name is Marty Wombacher. I do a blog called Meanwhile Back in Peoria, and she didn't know of it. It's better if they don't know.
Right.
And she said, okay, what can I do for you? I said, I would like to eat my lunch in here. And she said, excuse me? I said, I have my lunch, and I said, I'm sure you have a lunchroom here. Well, yeah, we do. I said, I'd like to eat my lunch in there. And it always goes like this, and then they look at me like I'm crazy, and they go,
what are you really after?
No, they always say, I don't understand what it is you really want to do here. And I said, I just want to eat my lunch in here. And then this is the very first one. So she said, and now it's really uncomfortable for me and for the receptionist.
Does she have to call somebody?
Well, a lot of times this happened. She said, can you give me like 5 minutes? And I'm like, sure. And she left. She went somewhere. I'm sure said to somebody, I got this guy down here. And she came back and she's like, well, yeah, if you really want to, the lunchroom is right over there. So I went in there and I said, I'm taking.
In there?
Yeah, I remember there was like a bottle of booze in there. I took a picture of that.
Oh.
They had a refrigerator. And as I'm doing all this and I set out my lunch, I'm eating it, people are like walking by, looking in the lunchroom.
We heard there's a guy came down here and took his lunch.
So I've done it probably 20, 25 times now to where sometimes, like I went to Jay Jansen's office. They were really nice and accommodating.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not even going to say this company because I try to be positive on the blog, but this one place wasn't very nice to me.
Are we talking about a place that I used to work?
No, that happened there too. I forgot. Yeah, the Journal Star threw me out.
Journal Star, you came.
I came there, and
I wasn't even aware of that.
What was strange that day was, it turns out the receptionist called Human Resources. And as I'm sitting there, I remember, I think like Luciano walked by, because I know everybody there.
Right.
Everyone's saying hi to me. And the receptionist finally, after like a long 10-minute wait, called me back. She's like, I'm sorry, you can't do it here. Which was a funny blast to the past because then when I went to the Pekin Daily Times, and Jeanette Brickner, who we know, she let me do it there, and that blog got a lot of attention. And to the Journal Star's credit, they did invite me back. Dennis Anderson, he read about it. He said, "Oh, I apologize. If I would have known, I would have let you in." And we went back and did have lunch there. But the tie-in with that was years ago when I was doing my magazine. I know you know this story. And everyone at the Journal Star has heard me say this about 20 times. I tried to write for the Journal Star and was told the famous words, you don't just walk in off the street and write for the Peoria Journal Star. And that got me, Christine McNeil was
that might have been true then, but we'll see if it's true now. Anyway.
Well, what that lit a fire under me, and that's why I started my magazine, People of Peoria. And I thought, I'll show her. Through my life, anything I've ever done, I always thought, I hope somehow Christine McNeil hears about this.
We need to. You will ramble all around this, but let's talk about Marty Monologues.
Yeah.
This is something you got into recently. Mm-hmm. What, you just had a yen to get up on stage and talk to people?
Again, it's a funny story. The seed for this was planted about 10 years ago. Have you ever met my friend Claire Keppel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you have.
Yeah.
Claire and I have been friends for years, and she said to me, like 10 years ago, she was living in Chicago, I was in New York, and we used to meet at Christmas time at Chili's.
Okay.
It just has become a tradition. And one year she said to me, she had seen somebody doing a monologue show in Chicago where she lived. And she's like, it was Eddie Izzard. He's an actor, and he also does stage stuff. She's like, Eddie Izzard, I saw him do this show as a monologue show. I want you to do that. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. I'm not going to do something like that. And for 10 years, every time she'd see me, she would say, how's the show coming along? And I'd be like, there is no show. Leave me alone. Well, I finally decided to do it. And it was inspired by I was doing a blog in the Apollo Theater. And I thought, you have a history with the Apollo.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I thought this would be a nice place to do a monologue show. So I started thinking about it. We got Sarah Marie Dillard and her husband Brandon Mooberry involved. They do live music, beginning and the end. I usually do its introduction and 3 stories. The first show, in between the stories, I made sandwiches.
There's that food thing again.
Again,
You can't
people
escape
loved it.
Yeah.
And then
you hand them out to the people?
Well, 3 audience members won a sandwich. I would call
Okay.
the number from their ticket.
Oh, wow.
And in between, I told stories. The last one I did, it was about growing up in the 60s. I told stories about...
Here in Peoria.
Oh, actually, it was in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
Our family lived in Louisville from 1963 to 1969.
Okay.
And so it was about people of our age era growing up. It was about being a child of the 60s and observing things. And it really seemed to touch a nerve. I'm talking to Bradley about doing it there because I really liked the theme of the show. I did that in Peoria, Chicago, and New York all in a week. Mm-hmm. And it went over really good in all 3 places. It did seem to
You lined up little theaters.
Yeah, I had 2 theaters I
music.
rented in Chicago, New York. Of course, in those 2 places, it was all people I knew.
Mm-hmm.
But here, I was proud of the fact that we almost sold out the Apollo. We had 120 people came to it.
That's close.
And like half of the people I didn't even know. Mm-hmm. Because when you're doing something like this, you just can't continually rely on your friends to come.
I mean, the whole idea is people probably know you vicariously, or if that's the right word, because they read you or they've heard of you.
Right.
So it's not like they know you, but they know of you.
Right.
And so what's coming up this fall?
Well, continuing to work on the blog. In the fall, the new Marty Monologues, that's going to be October 20th at the Apollo.
Right.
And it's called, as I said, it's called 45 Minutes of Fame. And it's my 3 stories.
So one of the stories you just outlined here earlier.
Right, the Idiot Trivia.
Yeah.
And then the other one was a magazine I did in New York called Fish Wrap, which got a lot of publicity, mainly more in New York. And then the last 15 Minutes of Fame was where I went to 365 bars. So you were on that blog, remember?
Yeah,
Steve is intertwined in my life.
Khaki
Jacks.
Yeah, and of course that was my last review at the Journal Star, food review.
Yeah,
Khaki Jacks.
Right.
So we keep back and forth. Well, we're running out of time here, Marty, and there's never enough time to talk about all the things you're doing. But folks need to get to Meanwhile Back in Peoria if they haven't seen it.
Right.
What's coming up? Do you have that set yet? Because I know you're working on it now, probably this week.
Yeah, I got to go home and put the one up. Today's post will be one of the chicken tours.
Chicken tour.
Yeah.
Well, we know that's good.
I mean, I have a couple days planned in advance. You have to tune in to see.
Well, that's good. That keeps it spontaneous.
I really only plan it like a week ahead of itself.
And if folks want more on the monologues, where will they get that info?
I have a Facebook page, just facebook.com/Marty Monologues.
Marty, we're running right out of time. So
Great. See you as always, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
We love having you on, Marty. We'll see you next time on Tartar Sauce.
PeoriaLife.com